anymore. We don't just have conversations with people where there's not an agenda. Right?
It's like meeting a stranger in a parking lot or something, and then like, hey, you want to have coffee?
Yes. Oh, so how you doing? How's your day?
Exactly. Well, we are live here, Coffee with Humans, with my soon-to-be new friend, Christina. She's still actually a stranger. I only met her about 8 minutes ago. That's the essence of Coffee with Humans. Two people just bumping into each other randomly and then saying, hey, let's grab coffee. Before we got on the broadcast, I was thinking if we could have this discussion anywhere, where would that be? And I came up with we could be sitting in Iceland in a hot spring.
Lovely.
If you could have this discussion anywhere, where would it be for you?
Love this question. I'm stumped right now. I'm not really a beach person in terms of getting in with the aquatic life, but I do like to be near it and feel the breeze from it. Yeah. And so anywhere by a beach.
What drew you to clicking the button to have coffee with me?
Was searching and I found this one and it grabbed me, it pulled me in, and it just seemed, your podcast and Coffee with Humans seemed very welcoming, that you were really eager and enjoyed just making meaningful connections.
Coffee with Humans is like Sunday brunch.
I love Sunday brunch.
Okay, good. Because, well, you're in the right place. Only There's no food. Well, it's true. We are live once again with Coffee with Humans, streamed all around the world and broadcast into outer space. I'm probably, it might not be true. With my new friend, Melanie. Melanie, welcome to Coffee with Humans.
Hi, Jason. Well, thank you for having me.
So let's get a handful of things out of the way. Number one, we don't know each other. Is this true?
That is true.
Okay. I've done zero research on you. So you've got a leg up if you've done any research on me. But I'm in Northern Illinois. Where are you located?
I am in Maryland, right outside of Washington, D.C.
Oh, yeah? How's the weather out there?
So yesterday we have weird weather. We're going to be getting, I don't know, are you getting rain? We're getting rain this week. Okay. So get usually, so I'm originally from Missouri. So usually whatever happens in Missouri, we get a week later. So I know my sister still lives there. So I know it's just been raining from what everybody has told me on Facebook. It's just been raining nonstop. Today, we're probably in the highs of close to 90. We've had 90 days a couple of times. Saturday, we're supposedly getting 51. So
yeah, that's the same with us. Like we were having a normal spring, and then all of a sudden it was like 88.
Yeah.
Out of the blue. And now, today is like 55. I don't understand what the deal is.
No.
Maybe it's all the volcanoes happening around the world. I don't know.
It's something happening. I don't know, but I like nice and steady. Well, I mean, I've never lived where there's nice and steady weather, but so
I don't know that. Well, that's true. There are a handful of places on the planet where there's steady weather, and then like crazy storms break out, and so nobody gets off free in life.
Not anymore.
Curious, what inspired you to click the button to have coffee with me?
Well, one, I do love coffee. I actually have coffee with me right now. So
well played.
I am a coffee drinker. And so the title first off, intrigued me. And then I did check out the podcast and was really like, I just love the concept. I just love the concept of you, talking with random strangers and just having conversations. And I find that that's, a little bit about what I'm actually good at. So, I set out as a goal for myself this year. I was going to be a guest on 12 podcasts, and yours honestly was the one that was kind of like, I was like, why not? It doesn't sound like there's a lot of pressure. So
there's no pressure. There's no pressure applied by me. I mean, people probably get wigged out or something like that because they know it's like broadcast around the world and live streamed. Like this is happening right now. It's not pre-recorded, so that's cool.
I'm just hoping the cat stays quiet. I can't make any promises. He just woke up from his morning nap, so it could go either way. So
I understand. So when you signed up, the system asked you a handful of questions, one of which was if your life was a novel, what would one of the chapters be titled? And you were talking about some heavy kind of like some heavy things as part of that sign up process. It felt like to me. Like
I think I was
and
probably
things like that.
100%. I was definitely in a I can't remember exactly when I signed up, but I know I was going through a lot. And, coming out of that, actually, I've been on the tail end of it now. So,
yeah. So being on the tail end of it, it's now you went from the hopeful resistor as a title, which is really interesting, to now when I was talking to you earlier, prior to the broadcast, doing some tech checks and then wondering, what's on your mind today and what would you title this chat if based on what's in your mind? You said the slow burn. So walk me through this hopeful resistor thing and then how this becomes the slow burn. Because I understand there are significant life transitions and moving through it is it's like traveling down the Mississippi. There are certain states that just don't look the same when you get further south.
So the background to the hopeful resistor is that I am always been that believer that I can go out and I can achieve anything if I truly set my mind to it. I know I have that ability, but the resistance part gets in like when I get in my own way and I stop or I start to resist like success, or I allow fear of failure to get in my way. And so, but yet there's still this part of me that, is this maybe the little girl in me that had the big imagination, that, had big dreams and big aspirations. And I think now as I'm getting older, I'm going to be 48 this year, that I, have really in the last few years have really pushed hard to pursue my own dreams and make my own business and build my own success. And it's, it's a constant battle. It's a constant, it's like riding a roller coaster, which I don't like to do. And so that's kind of where that hopeful resistor is, that there's always that part of me that's like, oh no, I can do this. I can, I can build this business and I have big dreams for this business. The resistance part is my own, me putting up my own walls and me preventing myself from being successful.
Interesting. I like what you talked about, this idea of resistance or resisting success. And you also tied that with fear of failure. And I think that people get the two confused because a lot of people say, well, I've got this, fear of failure. Or you also talked about imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And they talk about as fear of failure when really I think it is resistance to success.
Yeah, I really do think it's not, because I'm pretty good. And that's kind of where I'm at now. I think I'm, good with, I can deal with a lot of failures. I mean, my career, I had 18 years as a recruiter, which was also encompassing sales. So it's not like I was, never been faced with failure from a career standpoint, and even not from a relationship standpoint. So that part, I don't necessarily deal with the fear of failure a whole lot. I mean, every now and then that definitely, kind of creeps in, but I do find that I'm probably that person that does tend to build my own walls and build my own, things that prevent me from going forward. And then I'm like, there's always like two sides of my brain where it's like, well, that's stupid. And then, the other part of like, well, you're not there yet. You've got it. I'm constantly battling these dynamics in my own head. That sounds kind of crazy, but, in terms of building this business, because I mean, it was crazy. I built this business, I also say like, I'm the unintentional entrepreneur because I didn't build my business to be an entrepreneur. I didn't grow up going, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur one day. I built my business because I had to bring in income. I was in a very, weird state back in 2017, ending a relationship and, friendships that were toxic. I had pursued somebody else's passion and his dreams and helping build his dream, but I didn't even know what mine were. And so, I built this out of necessity. That's what, I built that. And so now we're here in 2021. So, and
yeah.
Gone through a pandemic and now figuring out what the world looks like from that standpoint.
It's my experience that a lot of folks who deal with that inner battle of sabotage, sabotaging one's own success, do tend to feel like they may be crazy. Like, because I think it is the big question of why would you do such a thing?
Right.
And and I don't know if I've ever told this story on the air or not, but I know I have told this when I've advised individuals, but back in 7th grade, I was in the spelling bee. And I'm far detached from 7th grade now, but I think the details are pretty spot on. So I'm standing up there in front of the class, and I'm standing there with my buddy Kevin Park, who's super smart dude too. And so I'm going to win the spelling bee. I've got the last word. I've got the word. I can win it if I just spell it right. And who the winner of the spelling bee in 7th grade is going to go on to regionals or citywide or something like that, right? Whatever that was. And I remember that as I'm mulling this word over in my head, thinking, I know how to spell this word. I can spell this word. I look over at Kevin, and then I kind of look back, and I've got this little sea of my peers in 7th grade staring at us. And I pondered that for a little bit, and I decided to misspell the word.
Wow.
And I know, ballsy. And so in my mind, what I believed I was doing was I was saying, well, I could spell it if I wanted to. I could win this, but Kevin cares more about this than me. And so I threw it to Kevin, and he, of course, spelled the word correctly, and then he went on. And really what was going on was that I was sabotaging my success because I was so afraid that whatever came after this little, enclosed area of all my friends was surely going to be, standing on a big stage with a bunch of people who don't know me, with a bunch of smarter dudes than me. And they're going to throw me a word like onomatopoeia. And I'm going to be like, I'm going to fail epically in front of all these people. They're all going to laugh. I'm going to cry and walk off stage left. And that was what was playing around in my head. And really what it was I decided instead to craft this little scenario and sabotage myself in a way to be like, well, I could spell it if I wanted to, but I'm going to be a hero and give it to my friend because he, quote unquote, cares more. No, I just don't want to, I just don't want to experience the eventual shame of finding out that, I walk off stage left in tears. And it's an interesting thing to look back on, because that's sort of like, well, I could do it if I wanted to, type of thing.
Yeah.
It's a thought that I know a lot of people deal with. And I feel like that's connected with imposter syndrome or connected with fear of failure. And it's really, I think, a method of self-sabotage.
It 100% is. I mean, telling yourself that, I'm always kind of dealing every so often the imposter syndrome pops up for me. And I'm always, I have to kind of put that sign it a voice and say, not now. We have to, we have to pursue. I had it recently. I've become pretty active on Clubhouse, and I'm part of a group that has a lot of LinkedIn strategists and like some of the best of the best. And I was literally like, what the heck am I doing in this group? Like, I literally am like, how did I get, asked to host a room? And, now I'm, weekly calls with like really some of the best minds when it comes to how to build your brand and, strategize on LinkedIn and, people that have given TED Talks and all sorts of things. And I'm like, to me, I'm always that little girl from Missouri. I'm like, from a small town in Missouri. I'm like, what am I doing here? So like, why do I have a voice at this table? So I have to kind of like, every so often I'm pretty good about like when it starts to pop up, like I'm pretty good with myself about that, but and not allowing it to go crazy. But you still have it. Like a client will hire me and I'll be like, why do they want to hire me? like they could hire anybody. Why did they hire me? I'm sure, I'm good about now just even admitting it, because, even if my clients see this and be like, great, I'm like, it's just that insecurity of not wanting to be the best that I can be. And what if I fail at it? Like, what if I'm not what if I can't come to the table with new ideas and new thoughts? And, what if I can't really help people? Like, I think I can,
Two really interesting things stand out for me in what you're talking about. One is you talked about assigning a voice, which I think is real interesting, because it's just that voice is just information. It is insecurity. Standing in the corner going, I'd just like to let you know, I'm here to keep you safe in the bounds.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's like sitting at a board of advisors or something like that. There has to be the one naysayer. And when nobody's a naysayer, sometimes, in team dynamics, it's good to assign somebody to look at the opposite and say, hey, but what if we didn't do that? That voice is information, and if we call it by a name, assign it a name, we can deal with it sort of separately outside of our minds, I find.
Yeah. I 100% agree with it. I mean, I literally, I'm actually reading a book right now called The Confidence Creator by Heather Monahan, and like last night on Clubhouse, she happened to be in a room and I got asked to like ask her a question, and I literally sat there before I went up on accepted it. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to ask Heather? I'm literally like reading her book right now. Her book was sitting right next to me on my bed. And I'm like, what am I going to ask her? Like, and then I was like, well, that's kind of stupid, because the whole this conversation is all about confidence. Like, like that's why you're, so it's one of those things that I think is very much, just facing it and saying, it's going to, like, I'll be okay. Like, I'll be okay. Like, I've got this one this time, but thanks for the concern. I appreciate it. But I've got this one. Like, you got to trust me on this. So,
yeah. I think there's also some interesting places that people get lost in comparison. So I had a person at one point in time talk to me about this Coffee with Humans thing, and they said, I could never do what you do. I was like, what? Do what? And they're like, you just talk to, like, you just get on this video call and you talk to people. And I was like, you've never spoken with anyone before? Is this like new to you that you just talk to somebody? I just happen to be inviting the rest of the world into the conversation. And it's interesting that some people say, well, you don't have any quote unquote fear, right? Or you don't seem to have a problem with that. And it's interesting, like in this space, no, I probably don't, because I've done this. I've done this before I did this live and online with people across the world. I did this sort of stuff, in close proximity. And so I become pretty good at this area. And so the answer is, well, no, it's not that I don't have those fears. It's not that I don't have those internal struggles. I have different ones, and I might have better strategies for coping through it, because I've had to learn those coping strategies. And that, I think, is something that people miss out on when when that voice comes up. They think, well, I can't, instead of I've not yet learned how.
Right.
And I can learn how, just like anything else. Am I willing to put in the effort to do that? And the effort in some ways is to just know that you're going to fail right out of the gate.
And like also thinking, like, what's the worst thing that can happen? Like I started asking myself that, really the question always posing like, well, what if I decide to pursue, a certain option in my business? Or what if I, go, out on a date? Or what if? And, and honestly, the option of the what if is always, the result of choosing it is always greater than the thought of, most of the time, of not choosing it. So, the risk is usually very minimal. And so it's not one of those things that, what are you going to miss out on? What if you don't take that opportunity or don't take that, what could happen? And, the reality is the odds of something bad happening are pretty minimal. And, and if something does happen, like, okay, well, we'll just address it when it happens and we'll just go with the flow.
Yeah.
And so I try to look at it from that way.
Absolutely. A lot of the things also that we believe might happen, and this is probably your experience too. I heard this from somebody else. They said, we ascribe that these bad things are somehow permanent and irrevocable. Mm-hmm. Instead of just being like, well, I tried it, it didn't work out, and now I don't do it. And there's a lot of the decisions that we make and the repercussions that we could have are temporary and can be redeemed. Like people say, well, I could never just move someplace. Like, why not? You could just move back. It'd be a complication for sure, but it's not a permanent thing. Like, what if I bought that? What if should I buy that product or should I not buy that product? Is that the right? It's like, you could just return it if you don't like it.
Right.
And we allow for these scenarios in a lot of aspects of life, and but we don't allow it sometimes when we're on the hook for it. Like, should I go to school or not? Well, you could try. You could just start. Right? Should I start a podcast? You could start one. You totally could. You might find, I don't like this. Fine, then don't do it anymore. Stop. Right? And it's interesting. Where do you think that people get caught in those thoughts of sort of embarking on something new and then recoiling or getting up to the edge and saying, forget it, not going to do this?
I think it's usually when it gets hard. I think when it gets really hard, I think that's usually when you can have some success, even if it's small successes, but oftentimes we think about hitting that, you talk about well, I want a 6-figure business. Okay. Well, if you're only at 4 figures right now, that's a pretty big jump, you got to start thinking differently. You have different systems in place, whatever the case may be. So maybe shooting for a 5-figure business would be better, it doesn't mean you can't ever have that, and then when you don't hit something or you hit an obstacle, I think that's when people tend to be like, well, this isn't working. This isn't, I can't keep doing this, or I can't keep pursuing this because it's not, paying off for me. And instead, well, what have been the benefits for that? And I think that's really when people get that, then they start getting down on themselves that I can't do this, or this isn't working, or nobody's listening to the podcast, or all these things. Where am I? I'm not going to find clients to pay for the, amount of money that I need to charge, or whatever the excuse is. We make excuses, but the reality is, there's so much proof in the world of other people doing certain things. Think about how many people have created podcasts. There was somebody that started it. I don't know who that was, but somebody started this idea. And now, go on, any platform and see how many people are doing it. That's proof enough that any of us, could definitely go out and do that, with, maybe we need to refine the name, the idea, whatever, but there's an audience for everybody. And so I think that's really when people get really discouraged, and I'm big on having the proof, okay, let me show you the proof. Let's find people that have done this. Let's see people that have been successful in navigating whatever area, that we want to look in, then you see that you can do it. but you also have to be really willing to work hard at it.
Yeah, I love that. I was at a conference recently, and gentleman, pretty successful business guy, stood up in front of his team and said, he talked about work. What did he say? Working, performance. Those are the three keys. Those are the three words on his slide. And he talked about this idea that everything that you start with is work. Everything. And you might work at that for a long time. You might work at it for months, years, tens of years. And as you begin or continue working there, something begins to start working. It's like, oh, this is getting easier, and I'm getting better payoff from my effort.
Yeah.
And then as we continue that working process, eventually we get to the point of performance, where now it's like, oh, this is effortless. This is, this is just like how we've seen people like you look at somebody as, a speaker or at a workshop or something like that. You're like, man, how does it make this look so easy? It's like, well, because you went through working, and now it's performance. Now it's just an art. It's like it's just existing. And I think, to your point of like, if you have a 4-figure business, you want to make it a 6-figure business, you're probably a different person between those two gaps. And many times we get stuck, I think, at that we chart our future and our goals based on our current mindset. And it's important, I think, to chart a goal that's beyond our current mindset. And as we set that intention, I believe we have that something magical happens where we begin to create the individual who we need to be to achieve that goal in the future. We have to reshape our thinking and allow for new patterns of thought.
100%. I'm really big on mindset when I work with my clients. As a career coach, I'm really big. I always tell my clients, like, first and foremost, confidence is the key. I don't care if you don't, people often ask like, oh, how did that person get hired? They didn't have any experience, or, they were, only a couple of years out. And I'm like, it's because they were confident. I mean, that's the truth. We hire people that we like are excited to be with, and if you don't, confidence, really, you have to believe yourself, even if the odds are stacked against you. But I 100% believe, I think you have to envision who you are. Like, you have to know what that person in the future wants, and where does that person live? Who is that person surrounded by? What kind of lifestyle does that person want to have? And you have to, it doesn't mean you have to go out and spend the money when you don't have it, but there are things you can do, like to, really carry that through, and, really believe in that person and know that you're working to become that person. Yeah. And, so it's one of those things that I'm just a huge believer of that. I think you have to start to grow your mindset. You can't be stagnant with it. Or you'll find other things that, I think it'll show up in other ways in your life as well, so that you're stagnant with.
Right. And, for sure. Since everything is all connected. So connecting this back to, I think the stuff that was in your mind, you're not just, I think, going on a limb here, that sometimes people will look into a conversation like this and they're like, yeah, that's great for them, but not understand that maybe you're a bit of an expert in this. And I know only the tip of the iceberg based on some titling that you gave me and topics that you're on your mind. You were talking about grief, you talked about loss, you talked about this idea of resistance, hopeful resistance, and now we're into the slow burn part of it. How do you connect the space of, or the pieces of information that we've been talking about here, throwing out, that clearly just kind of hitting a wall someplace? What's the connection back into slow burn, and why are you qualified to talk about any of this?
Well, so just to give some backstory, I was a recruiter for 18 years. I was with my last company for 8 years of that. So I hadn't been in the market. really, I did ask myself, like, what am I going to do? Like, I joke that like my staff kept getting younger and I was getting older. Now my staff, like I had one staff member that was like younger than my son, who's my oldest. And so I'm literally like, this isn't going to work. Like, I'm like, I have to have a plan. And I didn't have a plan, to be honest. So I left in 2016. I went on my own little journey. I put myself in the market. I was doing this coaching.
We lost her. She's going to be back. Oh,
there we
back.
go. But during 2017, I always say was a year of I ended friendships that were toxic. I ended situations that were, like I mentioned, working with a friend of mine who I was really pursuing his dreams, not my own. And I really got in touch with myself and really put myself first for the first time in a very, very long time. And ultimately started working. I was, took a few recruiting jobs, corporate recruiting. But it was my passion for the coaching. I was doing both full time. I was really I was definitely burnt out to a certain degree. I was burning myself out, but I really loved the coaching side. So 2018 made the decision, okay, I'm going to do this full time. I'm excited about it. So I jumped into this idea of, starting my own business and, figuring out what that looks like. And then ultimately 2019, we lost my dad. This last December, we lost my mom to stage 4 colon cancer. So we've, as a family, we had a lot to go through. I think part of that is, understanding the importance of time, but also understanding the importance of family and where that ranks in the world of work. And all this time, I have really big goals. I mean, I usually keep those goals for the most part to myself, because for me, they're like, okay, they're so personal. And so like, I don't want any naysayers ever to say you can't do it, because I don't want to hear it. And I don't think a lot of people know what I do behind the scenes. They're like, you go work out at 12 o'clock on some days of the week, or you, like, what do you do? Do you work? Like, how do you make money? So I don't think a lot of people, I think they're slowly starting to get, but they don't understand everything that I do and why I work so hard and what happens behind the scenes. And then, been coaching individuals now for, I was a recruiter for 18 years, but now for, close to 4.5 years or so, where I work with people on goals and mindset. But for me, the slow burn, I realized kind of coming into this year, I was okay with just where I'm at. Doesn't mean that I don't have my goals, and I still do. And I'm kind of getting back to like, let's rediscover those goals and let's like look at them and figure out what kind of priority. But I think it was just everything that had happened in life that I'm not, for the first time, and I don't know how long, I don't feel this pressure to like say that I've achieved, X, Y, and Z. Like, I'm okay with it just developing, and I'm okay with it just unfolding with however it's supposed to unfold. And knowing I still have to do the work. I mean, I still have to put in the effort. I can't just sit at home and, be guest on, podcasts and stuff like that. But, I still have to put in the work. I still have to work with my clients. But I'm okay with, like, for the first time, I'm not like super stressed about the financial side of the business. Like, I'm just really, it's all like, it is kind of cliche, but it's really literally just, it is a slow burn. It's just a nice little fire happening, and I'm really content with it. And I don't feel this over pressured need to, push myself beyond where I'm, where I'm at right now. And and it's kind of a nice feeling to honestly be at peace with that.
Have you found in this idea of allowing things to unfold and having some patience in that, how has that changed your, not only your, maybe it's your perception of opportunities, but how has that measurably changed the opportunities that have come your way?
Well, I mentioned to you, I had just literally did this newsletter that I send out to my audience. And this was the topic of it, was that that's kind of where I'm at right now. And, and I even said in there that Patience and we have a complicated relationship. So I was never a patient child. I was never a patient, super patient mother to some degree. Patience and I don't necessarily have, we have, had a love-hate relationship through my entire life. And now all of a sudden, like, I'm finding my patience, I'm finding like this and for me, it's a calmness. It's a peace. It's just, it's having, I think people, when somebody says, "Oh, I'm content," I think people like either want to go, "I'm sorry," or like it's a bad thing. Like, "Oh, she's content." And for me, I'm like, no, it's the greatest thing in the world. Like, I'm good with where I'm at and where, and like I said, I know that it's kind of coming to a little bit of an end where I want to like turn it up a little bit. I know I can kind of feel that. But over the last few months, like, just even the last year, I felt like I had whiplash of just like, I have my youngest is graduating next month. So of course we've had her senior year and colleges, and, I have, thankfully my oldest, he's all, good on his own. So, but, for the last few years, I've just been like, push. Oh no, you've got to do better in your business. You've got to like hit this certain figure in finances, and you've got to have this many clients, and you have to have this much in your savings, and like all these tick marks. And like, I'm okay with, I'm like, no, I've got money in the bank. I've got clients coming in, and I'm okay with that. And I'm happy with it. So, and that to me is like a weird, it's not weird to say that I'm happy, but it's just weird for me to like, I finally kind of acknowledged it to the public. So
yeah, that's huge. I think from my own personal experience, staying in that zone of kind of that slow burn, because I feel like I understand where you're at. Staying in the space of the slow burn allows capacity for life change.
Yeah.
So, you're going through some transitions that are inevitable. They're just going to come upon you. And I was talking to a guy the other day where we talked about life being a river, almost like whitewater rafting, So it's like sometimes the river opens up and it goes slower, and sometimes it narrows down and like,
yep.
We're going through. And the hope is to not fall out of the boat. And
that's all you can do.
Right. And so if we keep our capacity, if we don't strive, push, we end up with greater capacity to, I think, deal with the inevitable rapids that come. And then also, I think, a greater appreciation for when the river slows down and we're like, oh, look, and we have an opportunity to just kind of look around, and see things and notice things. And then also, along the lines of opportunity, we are more likely to see, I think, the things that will make our souls come alive rather than just staying in the rat race. And
100%.
there's time to just like, hey, I'm going to pull up on shore here and eat shore lunch because I can, right? And enjoy my life, which is, I've admittedly lived the other side of that, where it's just like boop, 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 go, out of necessity. It felt like, and it wasn't necessary. It only felt necessary.
I mean, I was working, my last like quote unquote full-time position. I was working that full-time in DC. I was working my business literally like my lunch breaks. I would come home on our metro and jump on a call with a client, like any moment I had, and I still work on, I'm still working on the business, it's just me, doing my business for me. So, I, joke if people check out, like found me on Instagram or whatever, they'll see pictures of the cat and I call him the coworker. But he's not really helpful when it comes to, these things. I wish he was. And I'm surprised that he's being quiet because usually he gets really loud when I talk to people.
Okay.
But only when I talk to people. Like I could be quiet the entire day and he won't say 2 words. So I jokingly refer to him as the coworker, and so it's one of those things that, so I still work, when even my downtime, if I'm watching TV or something like that, I'm probably doing something for my business, but it's not at the pace where I feel like, where I was in 2017 and even the last few years, and there was a lot of pressure, while my parents were sick and having to help them. And, we moved my mom and packed up her stuff and, all sorts of stuff. And so, but I was still having to work, and I was still having to, like, I couldn't stop working. That was the thing. Like, even though they had, I needed to be with my family, I couldn't just stop my business. And,
Right.
it still had to keep on going. And so that's, and I think probably some of that is probably just finally being kind of where I can get back to being like, okay, everybody's okay right now. Like everyone's, we're all doing the best we can. We're all in a good space. And so I can kind of enjoy this moment and just figure out what my next steps are going to be. And, and be happy with that. So
that's powerful. And it's interesting also that you can see sort of off in the distance of your journey that, it's like, okay, well, maybe it's time, maybe I want to speed this thing up. But it would seem to me that there's maybe a newfound thoughtfulness about how to do that so that it doesn't get out of control next time.
Yeah, I think part of it is just realizing, not having had the opportunity to do things with my mom, we lost out on that. And I'm trying not to get upset because I can't go there. But I think that has taught me a lot, especially about being a mom, and, my kid, we have this we have like this big, gigantic step family. And then we have this little small family. And so that's the thing that I think that's the biggest thing is, understanding how precious time really is. And so just appreciating graduation. And even though right now it's like I was bombarded earlier this morning with, my daughter plays field hockey and she's going to play in college, but okay, this is when her first, she has orientation, she has her first training camp, and I'm literally like, oh my God, like I thought we were past this at this age of like having her entire schedule planned out for us for the, literally the month of June, when she has to move into the dorms, when she starts pre-training, and, getting all of that. So I was kind of like, it was a nice we've had a little bit of a respite from that. And literally the schedule was like, okay, like, got to get her through all these, and her dad and I were talking and I was literally like, he's like, yeah, she isn't making her appointments like she's supposed. And I'm like, well, she needs to do those. So
yeah, there's a great book. And we're closing in on our time here, but I did want to mention there's a great book. It's written by Bobby Herrera called The Gift of Struggle. I actually have a link here. Not a link, but I have a thing up here. Bobby Herrera, The Gift of Struggle. And it talks he talks very candidly about his life. He's actually CEO of Populous Group. which is a major staffing firm.
Yeah.
Several $100 million staffing firm. And super nice guy. I've got a podcast actually I did with him a year and a half ago that can be found on YouTube. But great book about struggle and the struggles that he went through and the things that he took from that and how those struggles have measurably changed his life and how he operates. And just some powerful lessons, which is really interesting. You know, he's just a guy. Just like, you know, I'm just a guy, you're just a gal. We each have that opportunity as we walk down our journey to take those lessons for us, like what's going to work for us, and incorporate those. And I don't know, I find it very meaningful that you have found the lessons that you want to incorporate, however they've come about, to be able to craft the life that you want to have. I think there's got to be a bit of joy, and like you talked about, contentedness, right?
Yeah, it's like
which
it's
is
not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. You know, I don't feel like I think there's a difference between being content and settling. Like I'm not settling for not achieving certain things. Like I still, like I said, I have very specific goals and very specific things I want to achieve, but I'm okay with where I'm at right now. And I'm okay if it takes me, you know, a year, 5 years, whatever it takes to get to a certain point, you know, and like not feeling this pressure that I have to, you know, like my friends will give me a hard time because I've pushed off moving multiple times. Like probably you should never move like when you've got all these, you know, balls up in the air anyways, but I've like felt like this like huge, like the last few years of like, oh, I need to figure out a new place to live and the lease and all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm okay now. And they're like, when are you going to move? I'm like, I don't know. I'm like,
it's not on the priority list.
I was like, I am done just feeling like it has to be on the list of things. Like I was like, when I find the place that I want to move to, and I, you know, because I was feeling, I don't like that place, or I don't like that, or that's not a good location. And now I'm like, yeah, you know, I'll find it, and you know, it'll happen. So
what a great place to be, for sure.
Yeah. So it feels good. It's a nice, calm feeling. So
yeah. Well, I'm going to throw your link up here. People can get in contact with you at LinkedIn. Yeah. You do career coaching. True story.
It's a true story. I am a career coach, career and life coach, and I do a lot on LinkedIn, and it's probably the easiest place to find me. So
yeah. Well, I'm certain that there are people listening to this who will want to connect with you on a real personal level. It sounds like you have some wisdom to help them through maybe some scenarios that they're in. And I know of at least one person I want to get you in contact with who I think could really benefit from your wisdom. So thank you so much for being here on Coffee with Humans. I love the idea of meeting you, and now we did it. So
yes,
thank you so much. I do, you know, I honor your openness to come here and talk about your story and where you're at and where you've been, and all the things you're taking from that to, you know, craft life for yourself. I hope that's what all of our viewers and listeners are about doing today as well. You know, if you get one life, you might as well make it the one you want. You have to. You know, go out there and don't be afraid to pursue your dreams. That's what I say. You know, pursue them and go after them. So, and enjoy life. I mean, there's too much crap in the world to, you know, like just not to enjoy it and not to appreciate the small things. So absolutely. Well, to all our viewers and listeners, this is Coffee with Humans, live candid conversations between strangers who become friends. I met Melanie now 53 minutes ago, 4 minutes ago. And we got to know each other through this conversation, and all in an effort to make the world a better place. So thanks for joining us. Melanie, thank you so much for being here on Coffee with Humans. Thank you. I appreciate it. All righty. We'll catch you next time. Subscribe and share on YouTube.
One of the things I love about Coffee with Humans are the raw conversations I get to have, meeting new people just like you. If you or someone you know should be on Coffee with Humans, go to coffeewithhumans.com. Remember, the only rule is no sales calls.
This has been Coffee with Humans. Subscribe to get updates or click to have coffee with me. coffeewithhumans.com.